The church bells were already ringing when Ethan Cole's phone vibrated in his tuxedo pocket. 3 minutes before his wedding, he almost ignored it. Almost. The screen showed a number he hadn't seen in 8 months. Maya Brooks. His chest tightened instantly. Maya never called anymore. Not after the night she disappeared without explanation, taking half the light out of his life with her. She had left a short note on his apartment counter and vanished before sunrise. "I'm sorry. Please don't look for me." That was it. No fight. No goodbye. No reason. For 8 months, Ethan tried to understand what he'd done wrong. He searched every place she loved: the bookstore cafe in Brooklyn, the small beach in Cape May, where they used to watch storms roll in, even the hospital where she volunteered on weekends. Nothing. Then one day, exhausted and heartbroken, he stopped searching. And eventually, he said yes when Claire agreed to marry him. Claire was kind, steady, safe, but she wasn't Maya. The phone buzzed again. Ethan stepped away from the crowded bridal suite hallway and answered quietly. Maya. On the other end, silence. Then shaky breathing. "Ethan," she whispered. The sound of her voice hit him harder than he expected. It carried exhaustion, fear, and something broken. "Where are you?" he asked immediately. "Why did you leave?" Another silence. Then he heard something strange. A baby crying, soft, tiny, fragile. Ethan frowned. "Maya!" I didn't know who else to call. His stomach dropped. "Maya, whose baby is that?" She started crying before she answered. "Yours." The world stopped moving. The church music faded into nothing. The hallway disappeared. Ethan could only hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. "What?" "I found out 2 weeks after I left," she said through tears. "I was scared, Ethan. You had just gotten the offer in Chicago. Your whole life was finally coming together. You wanted stability, a future, a family, and I panicked. You left because you were pregnant. I thought I'd ruin everything." Ethan leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. For 8 months he thought she stopped loving him, but she had been carrying his child alone. "Why now?" he whispered. Her voice cracked completely. "Because he's sick." The baby cried again, weaker this time. Ethan closed his eyes. "What do you mean sick?" "He has a lung infection." They admitted him. "This morning." She inhaled shakily. "I tried to do this alone, Ethan. I really did. But when the doctor asked for family history, when they asked for the father, I realized I couldn't keep pretending you didn't exist." "Which hospital?" "St. Vincent's." He opened his eyes immediately. "Maya, listen to me carefully. I'm coming, don't know," she said quickly. "You're getting married." Not anymore, he thought, but he couldn't say that yet. Inside the chapel, guests were beginning to stand. The ceremony was seconds away. Claire was probably waiting at the altar. Ethan stared at the church doors. Then he heard another cough from the baby over the phone. A tiny, painful sound, and suddenly the decision made itself. 20 minutes later, Ethan walked into St. Vincent's Hospital still wearing his tuxedo. Nurses stared as he ran through the pediatric wing searching for room 214. When he reached the door, he froze. Maya sat beside the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, holding a tiny sleeping infant against her chest. Their son. The baby had Ethan's eyes. Ethan felt his knees weaken. Maya looked up slowly, fear written all over her face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan crossed through room in 3 steps and wrapped both of them in his arms. Maya broke instantly, sobbing into his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she whispered over and over. "I was so scared." Ethan looked down at the baby carefully. So small, so helpless, and somehow already the center of his entire world. "What's his name?" he asked softly. Maya wiped her eyes. "Noah." Ethan smiled through tears. "Hey, Noah." The baby stirred slightly at the sound of his voice. Something inside Ethan shattered and healed at the same time. He missed 8 months. 8 months of first kicks, cravings, doctor visits, sleepless nights, fear, loneliness, all because Maya believed she had to carry everything herself. And somehow, he understood. Maya had grown up watching her mother struggle alone after being abandoned. Love, to her, always came with conditions, always temporary. She truly believed Ethan would leave too, so she left first. "You should hate me," she whispered. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "I'm angry," he admitted honestly. "I'm hurt, but hate you." He shook his head. "I could never hate you." Maya cried harder. Outside the room, Ethan's phone exploded with messages. Claire, his mother, friends, the West, wedding planner. reality waiting for him. Maya noticed the screen light up. "You should go back," she whispered painfully. Ethan stared at her, then at Noah, then back at her again. "I can't marry someone else while my son is lying in a hospital bed." Maya's face crumbled. "You don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing." His voice softened. "It's about love." The words hung in the room, not dramatic, not loud, just true. Hours passed. Ethan stayed the entire night. He held Noah while nurses changed IV lines. He learned how to warm bottles. He listened carefully as doctors explained medications and recovery chances. And every once in a while he caught Maya watching him with stunned disbelief, like she couldn't understand why he stayed. Around 3 a.m., Noah finally stopped coughing long enough to sleep peacefully. Maya sat curled in the chair beside Ethan, exhausted beyond words. "You really came," she whispered sleepily. Ethan looked at his son resting against his chest. "There was never a world where I wouldn't." Maya started crying again, quietly this time. Not from fear, from relief. For the first time in 8 months, she wasn't alone anymore. Morning sunlight slowly filled the hospital room. Noah's fever had dropped. The doctor smiled for the first time all night. "He's responding well." Maya covered her mouth and burst into tears again. Ethan pulled her close instinctively. And in that tiny hospital room with no flowers, no music, no perfect ceremony, something far more important than a wedding began. A family. The first thing Ethan noticed the next morning was Maya sleeping upright in the hospital chair. The second was Noah gripping his finger. Tiny, warm, trusting. Ethan stared at his son in complete silence while the early sunlight poured through the hospital blinds. Noah's breathing sounded steadier now, less strained than the night before. But every small cough still made Ethan tense instantly. A nurse walked in quietly and smiled. "He's doing much better." Ethan nodded softly, afraid to wake him. The nurse checked Noah's monitors before glancing at Ethan's tuxedo, now wrinkled from an entire night in the hospital. "Long wedding?" she joked gently. Ethan looked down at the baby. "Something like that." When the nurse left, Maya stirred awake slowly. Her eyes widened in panic for half a second, like she thought Ethan had disappeared. Then she saw him holding Noah, and relaxed. The expression on her face nearly broke him. "You stayed," she whispered. Ethan frowned slightly. "Why do you keep sounding surprised?" Maya looked away. "Because people leave." The words were quiet, simple, but Ethan suddenly understood so much about her. Maya had spent her whole life preparing for abandonment before it happened. Her father left when she was 6. Her college boyfriend cheated on her after promising forever. Her mother worked 3 jobs and still apologized every night for not being enough. Love in Maya's world was temporary, conditional, fragile, but Ethan had loved her differently, or at least he thought he had. Now he wondered if he'd ever truly shown her. A knock interrupted the silence. Then Claire walked in. Maya immediately froze. Ethan stood carefully, still holding Noah. Claire looked exhausted. Her makeup was gone. Her wedding dress had been replaced with jeans and a coat thrown over pajamas. For a few painful seconds, nobody spoke. Then Claire's eyes landed on the baby. Understanding hit instantly. She whispered. Maya lowered her head in shame. "Claire, you don't have to explain," Claire said softly. "Ethan Stephen." PPD forward. Claire, but she looked at him with heartbreaking calm. "You love her." It wasn't a question. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it again, because lying now would be crueler than the truth. Claire nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes despite her small smile. "I think part of me always knew." The guilt hit Ethan hard. Claire had been nothing but kind to him, patient, loyal. She deserved honesty long before this moment. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know." She looked toward Maya again, then toward Noah, and suddenly Claire laughed softly through tears. "Honestly? This is the most Ethan thing you've ever done." Ethan blinked. "What does that mean? You always choose people over plans." She shook her head with emotional disbelief. "You were literally standing at the altar, and you still ran to someone who needed you." Maya started crying quietly again. Claire noticed immediately, and to Maya's complete shock, she walked over and handed her a tissue. "You must have been terrified," Claire said gently. Maya looked stunned. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know." There was no bitterness in Claire's voice now, only sadness, the kind that comes with. "And you realize love cannot be forced into the wrong shape. Claire looked at Ethan one last time. I hope he grows up knowing his dad came running for him. Ethan swallowed hard. Then Claire smiled sadly and left the room. Just like that. No screaming, no dramatic goodbye, only grace. The silence afterward felt enormous. Maya wiped her tears quickly. You should go after her. She deserves someone who loves her completely. Ethan replied softly. Maya stared at him. You really mean that? Yes. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache, because for 8 months she had convinced herself Ethan would resent the baby, that he would see fatherhood as a burden. Instead, he looked at Noah like he'd discovered the meaning of life. Later that afternoon, Noah finally woke properly. His little eyes blinked open slowly before settling on Ethan's face. Ethan smiled immediately. Hey there, buddy. Noah stared at him seriously for 2 full seconds, then sneezed directly onto Ethan's tuxedo. Maya burst out laughing for the first time in months. A real laugh. Not forced, not exhausted. Beautiful. Ethan looked offended. Did he just attack me? He definitely did. No respect at all. Noah M. Made a tiny sound that almost resembled a laugh himself, and suddenly the room felt lighter, warmer, like maybe broken things could still become beautiful again. That evening, Ethan stepped outside the hospital briefly to call his mother. She answered on the first ring. Ethan Cole, where have you been? People think you got kidnapped. I'm at St. Vincent's. A pause. Are you hurt? No. Another pause. Then quietly. What happened? Ethan looked through the hospital window at Maya holding Noah. I have a son. Silence exploded on the other end. You what? Despite everything, Ethan laughed tiredly. Yeah, his mother gasped loudly, then immediately started crying. Oh my God. Oh my God. I know. A grandson, she whispered emotionally. Ethan smiled. His name's Noah. His mother cried harder, and for the first time since arriving at the hospital, Ethan felt something besides shock. Hope. Real hope. Not because life suddenly became perfect. It wasn't. There would be difficult conversations, complicated healing, pain they still needed to face. But sitting in that hallway, listening to his mother cry happy tears over a child she hadn't even met yet, Ethan realized something important. Love had found them anyway, even through fear, even through mistakes, even through 8 lost months. Inside the room, Maya looked up and caught Ethan staring through the glass. She smiled softly, small, uncertain, but real. And Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was never walking away from them again. 3 days later, Noah was finally allowed to go home. Maya cried the moment the doctor said the words. Not dramatic tears, quiet ones. The kind that come after carrying fear for too long. Ethan stood beside her holding Noah's tiny diaper bag while the nurse explained medications and feeding schedules for the 5th time. He listened carefully to every word like his life depended on it. Maya noticed. Most people nodded politely during hospital instructions. Ethan asked questions. What position helps his breathing best? How often should we check his temperature? What symptoms mean we come back immediately? The nurse smiled warmly. You're a fast learner, Dad. The word hit Ethan differently every single time. He glanced down at Noah sleeping against his chest and felt something tighten emotionally inside him. Not fear anymore. Responsibility. IT. Love. Purpose. Outside the hospital, cold wind rushed across the parking lot as Ethan carefully buckled Noah into the car seat for the first time. Maya watched quietly from beside him. You already know how to do that? Ethan shrugged slightly. I watched 3 YouTube tutorials last night. She laughed softly, then suddenly became emotional again, because that was Ethan. He showed love in effort, in details, in staying up at 2 a.m. learning how to protect someone. When they reached Maya's apartment, Ethan's expression changed instantly. The building was old, not unsafe, but worn down by years of neglect. Flickering hallway lights, broken elevator, thin walls that carried arguments from neighboring apartments. Maya noticed his reaction immediately. It's temporary, she said quickly. Ethan looked around carefully. You've been raising Noah here alone? She nodded quietly. The truth was harder than she wanted to admit. The past 8 months had nearly destroyed her financially. Morning sickness made her lose shifts at the diner. Medical bills piled up. She sold her camera, her favorite possession, to pay rent 2 months earlier. And after Noah got sick, she stopped sleeping almost entirely. But every time things became unbearable, she reminded herself why she left. Because Ethan deserved freedom. A future, not this struggle. Yet somehow, standing beside him now, she realized something painful. Maybe she never gave him the chance to choose. Inside the apartment, Ethan noticed little things everywhere. Baby bottles drying beside unpaid bills, tiny socks hanging near the heater, a couch clearly used as a bed. Maya had been surviving, not living, and she had done it completely alone. No wonder she looked exhausted all the time. Noah started crying softly. "I got him," Maya said quickly. But Ethan picked him up first, awkwardly, carefully, like he was handling something sacred. To both their surprise, Noah calmed almost immediately. Maya stared. Ethan smirked proudly. "Looks like he prefers me. One lucky moment doesn't count." Noah spit up on Ethan's shirt instantly. Maya burst out laughing. Ethan looked horrified. "Oh, come on." The laughter filling the apartment felt unfamiliar, new. For months, the place had only known silence, stress, and crying. Now it sounded alive. Later that night, Maya found Eth, and standing alone near the small kitchen window while Noah slept nearby. "You're thinking too hard," she said gently. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I missed everything." Her chest tightened. "You didn't miss everything. I missed your pregnancy." His voice cracked slightly. "I missed hearing his heartbeat for the first time. I missed every doctor appointment. I wasn't there when you were scared." Maya looked down. "That was my fault." "No." Ethan turned toward her immediately. "You were afraid. There's a difference." Tara's tears filled her eyes again. "I really thought you'd hate me, Di." Ethan stepped closer slowly. "Maya, I was in love with you long before Noah existed." The words shattered something inside her, because deep down she had always believed love had to be earned, maintained, protected through perfection. And the moment she became complicated, pregnant, emotional, difficult, she assumed Ethan would leave. Instead, he was standing here grieving the moments he lost, not the burden he gained. "You make things sound so simple," she whispered. "No," Ethan said softly. "You just make them harder than they need to be." Before she could answer, Noah cried suddenly from the couch bassinet. Both of them moved instantly, then paused awkwardly when they nearly collided. For half a second they stared at each other and laughed. "You go," Maya said. "No, you're faster. You're taller. That's not how parenting works." Noah cried louder as if annoyed by both of them. Finally, Ethan scooped him up carefully. "There, buddy. Your parents are clearly inexperienced." The words slipped out naturally. "Parents." Both Ethan and Maya froze slightly. Then Noah yawned dramatically in Ethan's arms, and somehow the tension disappeared. That night, Ethan refused to leave. Maya argued at first. "You don't even have clothes here." "I'll survive, Di. The couch is terrible." Dive slept in airports. "There's barely enough food." Di saw eggs. "You hate eggs." "I'm evolving, Di." By midnight, Ethan was asleep, half falling off the tiny couch with Noah resting on his chest. Maya stood quietly in the hallway watching them. The sight nearly destroyed her emotionally, because for the first time since Noah was born, the apartment finally felt like a home instead of a hiding place. She walked over carefully and covered Ethan with a blanket. He stirred, idly awake. "You okay?" He mumbled sleepily. Maya nodded, but tears slipped down her cheeks anyway. Ethan noticed immediately. Without speaking, he reached for her hand, half asleep, completely sincere. Maya looked down at their fingers intertwined beside Noah's tiny sleeping body. And suddenly the loneliness she'd carried for 8 months cracked open all at once. Not because life was fixed, not because the pain disappeared, but because someone was finally sharing the weight with her. And for the first time in a very long time, Maya allowed herself to believe she didn't have to do everything alone anymore. By the second week, Noah had completely changed Ethan's life. Not gradually, instantly. His expensive downtown apartment now had baby formula in the fridge beside energy drinks. Tiny bottles sat next to business reports. Ethan's phone gallery, once filled with work presentations and skyline photos, had become nothing but pictures of Noah sleeping in strange positions. And somehow, Ethan had never been happier. At 3 a.m. he was researching infant fevers. At 5 a.m. he was warming bottles half asleep. At 7 a.m. he was showing up late to meetings with spit up on designer shirts. His co-workers were confused. His mother was thrilled. Maya was overwhelmed. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the apartment carrying grocery bags, diapers, medicine, and a brand new crib still inside the box. Maya blinked at him. What is all this? Supplies? You bought half a store. We were low on wipes. We had wipes. We had wipes. We had wipes. We had 6 wipes. That's still wipes? That's still wipes, died. Ethan ignored her and started assembling the crib immediately. Maya crossed her arms, trying not to smile. You know you don't have to fix everything, right? Ethan looked up while tightening a screw. I know. But the truth was, he couldn't stop trying. Every time he looked at Maya, he saw exhaustion hidden beneath her smile. He noticed how quickly she apologized for things that weren't her fault, how she flinched anytime money was mentioned. 8 months alone had changed her, and Ethan hated that he hadn't been there to protect her from any of it. Meanwhile, Noah had developed a favorite activity, crying exclusively when Ethan held him during important phone calls. Absolutely not, Ethan whispered one evening while pacing the apartment with Noah in his arms. You suck. 30 seconds ago, Noah screamed louder. On speakerphone, Ethan's business partner sighed. Is that your son again? Ethan bounced Noah carefully. He's expressing himself. He sounds furious. He's passionate. Maya laughed so hard from the kitchen she nearly dropped a spoon. Ethan pointed accusingly. You think this is funny because he got your attitude. Noah is innocent. Noah immediately spit up on Ethan's shoulder again. Maya lost the argument by laughing too hard, but beneath the warmth growing between them, something still remained fragile. Neither Ethan nor Maya had talked about them, not truly. They talked about Noah, schedules, bills, doctor appointments, but never the real question hanging quietly between them. What were they now? One night, after Noah finally fell asleep, Maya stepped onto the apartment fire escape for fresh air. The city glowed below them in soft golden lights. A few seconds later, Ethan joined her carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You look like you needed this, he said. She accepted the cup quietly. For a while, they simply sat beside each other in silence. Then Maya finally spoke. Claire called me today, Tan. Turned immediately. She did. Maya nodded slowly. She asked how Noah was doing. Ethan looked surprised. What else? She told me not to waste what almost got lost. The words settled heavily between them. Maya stared down at her coffee. I hurt a lot of people. Yes, Ethan admitted honestly. She nodded like she deserved that answer. But you were hurting too, he added gently. Maya looked away quickly before he could see tears forming again. I still don't understand why you stayed. Ethan frowned softly. Why do you keep asking that? Because you had an easier life before this. He almost laughed in disbelief. Easier doesn't mean better. She looked at him carefully. You really mean that? Yes. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just truth. Maya's voice became smaller. You should have had the chance to decide if you wanted this. Ethan leaned back against the railing. You know what my biggest regret is? She shook her head. That you spent 8 months thinking you weren't worth choosing. Maya stopped breathing for a second, because nobody had ever said something like that to her before. Not once in her entire life. Ethan looked out at the city lights. You thought love would disappear the second life became difficult. He glanced at her softly. But Maya, hard things are where love matters most. Tears slid down her face silently. She hated crying this much lately, but Ethan's kindness always reached the exact places she spent years trying to hide. I was terrified, she whispered. I know. I kept imagining you looking at me differently. Ethan shook his head slowly. The only thing I see differently now is how strong you were. That broke her completely. Maya covered her face as she cried quietly into her hands. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled her gently against his chest, and for the first time in months, Maya allowed herself to collapse emotionally without apologizing for it. No pretending, no hiding, just honesty. I don't know how to do this, she admitted shakily. Ethan rested his chin lightly against her hair. We'll learn. We? The word wrapped around her heart softly, steadily, safely. Inside the apartment, Noah suddenly started crying through the baby monitor. Ethan sighed dramatically. He always interrupts emotional moments. Maya laughed through tears. Maybe I'm hungry. Or maybe he simply enjoys chaos. They walked back inside together. But halfway through the doorway, Maya stopped suddenly. Ethan? Yeah? She looked nervous again. Vulnerable. I never stopped loving you. Ethan stared at her for one long heartbeat. Then two. Then he crossed the distance between them and kissed her. Softly. Carefully, like someone returning home after being lost for a very long time. Maya melted instantly. Not because the kiss fixed everything, but because it felt honest. Real. When they finally pulled apart, Noah cried louder from the bedroom. Ethan exhaled tiredly. He really has incredible timing. Maya smiled for the first time without sadness hiding behind it, and together, they went to their son. For the first time since Noah was born, life started feeling normal. Not perfect, but real. Messy mornings, sleepless nights, bottles in the sink, tiny socks disappearing mysteriously in laundry. Ethan learning that babies could somehow cry, sneeze, and poop at the exact same time. Is this medically allowed? He asked one morning while holding Noah at arm's length. Maya laughed from the couch. You wanted fatherhood. I was. Expecting a training manual. Noah blinked innocently before spitting up again. Ethan sighed deeply. This tiny man is attacking me personally. But despite the exhaustion, happiness slowly settled into the apartment like sunlight. Ethan officially moved in 2 weeks later, not through some dramatic announcement. He just stopped leaving. His suits appeared in the closet beside Maya's sweaters. His coffee mug permanently stayed near the sink. Noah became used to falling asleep on Ethan's chest every evening, while Maya watched from nearby pretending not to cry emotionally every 5 minutes. One rainy afternoon, Ethan came home carrying takeout and found Maya sitting quietly at the kitchen table staring at a stack of unpaid medical bills. Her expression told him everything instantly. Fear. Again. Ethan set the food down carefully. How much? Maya quickly covered the papers. It's fine, Maya. I said it's fine, but her voice cracked halfway through. Ethan gently pulled out the chair beside her. You don't have to survive everything alone anymore. The words hit hard because part of her still didn't fully believe them. All her life, needing help felt danger. Hours. Temporary. Like the moment she leaned on someone, they'd disappear. Ethan noticed the panic behind her silence. Without another word, he quietly took the bills. Maya immediately shook her head. No, Noah is my son too. I'm not asking for money. You shouldn't have to ask. Tears burned behind her eyes again. God, she was tired of crying. But nobody had ever made care feel this gentle before. Not controlling, not transactional, just love. I don't know how to let people help me, she whispered. Ethan reached across the table slowly. Then we start small. She looked at him carefully. How? He smiled softly. Let me carry groceries without arguing first. Despite herself, Maya laughed. That's your solution. I'm building toward emotional growth gradually. She shook her head, smiling. And for a little while, things felt light again, until Ethan's mother arrived unexpectedly 3 days later. Maya panicked instantly. Oh my God. What? What if she hates me? Ethan blinked. My mother cried for 20 minutes because Noah smiled at her over FaceTime. That doesn't mean she likes me. Before Ethan could answer, the doorbell rang. Maya ooked ready to flee the country. Ethan opened the door, laughing softly. His mother swept into the apartment carrying enough baby supplies to survive a natural disaster. Blankets, toys, tiny clothes, a stuffed giraffe taller than Noah himself. Then she saw Maya standing nervously near the kitchen. The room went quiet for one terrifying second, and then Ethan's mother walked directly toward her and hugged her tightly. Maya froze completely. You poor girl, his mother whispered emotionally. You went through all of this alone? Maya's eyes widened instantly. No anger, no judgment, only compassion. And somehow that hurt even more. I'm sorry, Maya whispered shakily. Ethan's mother pulled back gently and held her face. No, sweetheart, you were scared. Her eyes softened. There's a difference. Maya almost cried on the spot. Again, later that evening, Ethan walked into the living room and stopped in shock. His mother and Maya were sitting together on the couch laughing, while looking through baby photos on Maya's phone. Traitors. You showed her the bathtub picture? Ethan gasped. Maya grinned. It's adorable. It's humiliating. His mother looked delight. He used to scream every time water touched his face. Mum. Noah deserves the truth. Maya laughed harder. Ethan stared at both of them suspiciously. This family alliance feels dangerous. Noah sneezed loudly from his baby seat, as if agreeing. That night, after his mother finally left, Maya stood quietly washing bottles in the kitchen. Ethan wrapped his arms gently around her from behind. You survived. She likes me. Of course she likes you. Maya leaned back against him carefully. For a moment neither spoke, then she whispered something so quietly Ethan almost missed it. "I think I'm finally breathing again." His chest tightened instantly, because he knew exactly what she meant. The constant fear inside her had started fading little by little, not disappearing completely, but softening, healing. Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "You don't have to be afraid all the time anymore." Maya closed her eyes. "I'm trying to believe that. You will." Before she could answer, Noah began crying from the bedroom again. Ethan groaned dramatically. "I swear he has a sixth sense for interrupting us." Maya smiled. "He's your son, that feels insulting." Somehow, they walked toward the bedroom together. But halfway there, Maya suddenly stopped. "Ethan, yeah?" Her expression turned serious. "What if one day you realize this isn't the life you wanted?" Ethan stared at her quietly for a long moment. Then he reached for her hand and placed it carefully against Noah's bedroom door, where soft baby noises echoed from inside. "This," he said gently, "is the only life that's ever felt real to me." Maya looked at him like her heart didn't know how to hold that kind of love yet. And maybe it didn't, not fully, but for the first time in her life, she was finally starting to try. Winter arrived quietly. By December, Noah had learned how to crawl badly and destroy peace professionally. The apartment looked completely different now. Baby toys covered the floor. Family photos filled the walls. Tiny shoes sat beside Ethan's expensive dress shoes near the front door, like two entirely different lives had somehow merged into one. And maybe they had. One Saturday morning, Maya woke to complete silence, which was terrifying. She sat up instantly. "Ethan?" No answer. "Noah?" Still nothing. Panic kicked in immediately until she walked into the living room and froze. Ethan was asleep on the couch with Noah lying on his chest wearing one tiny sock and absolutely no pants. Cartoons played quietly in the background. A half-made bottle sat on the coffee table beside an open parenting book titled Understanding Your Baby's Sleep Schedule. Maya laughed softly to herself. The book was upside down. She stood there watching them for a long moment, her boys. The thought still overwhelmed her sometimes, because less than a year ago she believed she would raise Noah alone forever. Now she couldn't imagine life any other way. Noah suddenly opened his eyes and saw her. "Da-da-da!" he shouted proudly while smacking Ethan's face. Ethan woke in panic. What? What happened? Is he on fire?" Maya laughed harder. "No, but apparently someone said his first word." Ethan blinked sleepily, then looked down at Noah. "You said Dada?" Noah smiled proudly like he had personally solved world hunger. Ethan looked emotional instantly. "That counts, right? That absolutely counts." Maya crossed her arms teasingly. "It sounded accidental. It was intentional. I felt the connection spiritually." Noah sneezed directly into Ethan's mouth. Maya nearly I laughed. "Yeah," she managed between laughs. "Very spiritual." Life became filled with moments like that. Small ones. Real ones. The kind nobody posts online because they look ordinary from the outside. But to Maya, they felt extraordinary. Like grocery shopping together while Noah chewed on receipts. Like Ethan dancing around the kitchen at midnight trying to stop Noah from crying. Like falling asleep tangled together on the couch after exhausting days. For the first time in her life, love didn't feel temporary. It felt lived in. Safe. And then one evening in early spring, Ethan took Maya back to the beach in Cape May. The same beach where they used to watch storms together years ago. The ocean wind was cold, but Noah sat bundled in blankets against Ethan's chest staring at the waves with serious concentration. "He looks like he pays taxes," Maya whispered. Ethan nodded solemnly. "Very responsible citizen." They walked slowly along the shoreline while the sunset painted gold across the water. Then Ethan stopped walking. Maya noticed instantly. What? He looked nervous. Actually nervous. Which almost never happened. Maya, her heart started racing. Ethan adjusted Noah circa, really in one arm before pulling something small from his coat pocket with the other. Not a fancy velvet box, just a slightly crooked silver ring. Maya stared at it in shock. "I bought it 3 days before our wedding," he admitted quietly. "The first one." Tears instantly filled her eyes. "I kept it all this time." The ocean crashed softly behind them. Ethan looked at her carefully. "We lost months." His voice shook slightly. "And we can't change that." Maya covered her mouth emotionally. "But if you let me," he smiled softly. "I'd like forever instead." The tears spilled before she could stop them. Ethan laughed gently. "You're crying already." I haven't even asked yet. Yes, you did. I technically implied you implied emotionally. Noah suddenly yelled something unintelligible and threw one of his socks into the ocean. Ethan sighed deeply. My son supports romance through chaos. Maya laughed through tears. Then Ethan finally asked the question anyway, properly, fully. Maya Brooks, will you marry me? This time there was no fear inside her, no instinct to run, no voice telling her she wasn't worthy of being loved completely. Just certainty. Maya nodded while crying and laughed, hugging at the same time. Yes. Ethan kissed her immediately while Noah clapped aggressively for no reason at all. And standing there beside the ocean with the wind in their faces, their son babbling between them, and a future neither of them had planned but both desperately wanted, Maya realized something beautiful. The worst mistake of her life had led her back to the greatest love she'd ever known. Not perfect love, not easy love, but real love. The kind that stays. The kind that shows up 3 minutes before everything falls apart and refuses to leave,